Yo, what is up guys? Delboy here, aka Blue Collar Sports TV. Hopefully you guys are doing well. If you're new here, smash that like, hit subscribe, all of that good stuff. So this video is a quick review of the undercard for David Benavidez versus Caleb Plant. I have to say, I actually really enjoyed this card. I felt the main event was good, it was a good fight. I think it could have been better, as I was saying in my post-fight review, if that fight was officiated better. But I still enjoyed the fight. I felt it was intriguing throughout, and the last sort of 4 or 5 rounds, Benavidez started to make it a bit brutal, and gave the crowd something to cheer. So yeah, the main event was pretty solid, I would say. It was a good fight, and the card in general, in my opinion, was enjoyable. In fact, I can't really remember the last time I sat down and watched like a card throughout, because usually when we get these big fights, sometimes there's a couple of fights on the undercard, but usually I will tune out of a couple of fights. I'll be half watching, not really paying attention, but I sat through and watched this card from start to finish, the televised section on Showtime, and I really enjoyed it. I felt all fights delivered to a certain extent. But yeah, let's start with Cody Crowley versus Abel Ramos, which opened the pay-per-view segment of this card. This fight was a 12-rounder and a WBC welterweight title eliminator. Have to say, both guys put on a hell of a show. High-paced fight, high-octane fight. Cody Crowley, as we know, if you've seen him, is a big welterweight, southpaw, sets a real high pace. He's a strong guy, Cody Crowley, aggressive, come-forward fighter. Not the biggest puncher, but he is strong. He's good viewing. You know, on a pay-per-view undercard, you match him right, he's going to deliver, and this fight was matched perfectly, in my opinion. Cody Crowley started this fight really well. He was really smothering Abel Ramos, collapsing the pocket, working up close, body shots, uppercuts through the middle, right uppercuts with his southpaw lead. Pushing Ramos against the ropes. Ramos would try to fire back, landing good shots of his own in the phone booth exchanges. But early on in this fight, I felt Ramos was being swarmed by Cody Crowley, being outworked, and at times it looked like Ramos couldn't really keep the pace, to be honest. But yeah, I felt Cody Crowley started this fight really well. I felt he was on top, but Abel Ramos has been around now for a little while. He's a good mid-tier welterweight, like a gatekeeper, I guess you would say. He's a tough guy, good chin, good power, and he's one of those guys who doesn't go quietly, and that was the case in this fight. After a bit of a rocky start, I felt Ramos came back into this fight well, going back and forth with Cody Crowley, landing good body shots on Crowley, fighting fire with fire, landing some real hard shots on Cody Crowley. It was a back and forth fight, I felt. Ramos once again proving why he gets these sort of fights. He always delivers, he always puts on a good show. And he tried his best to get back into the fight, but I felt that Cody Crowley was always a step ahead. When Ramos would win a round, Cody Crowley would come back and win his own. When Ramos would have good success, Cody Crowley would then respond. I always felt that Cody Crowley was a step ahead in this fight, always in the lead kind of thing, especially after how he started this fight. But Ramos made it very competitive. He gave it his all, but ultimately, his work rate wasn't quite as impressive as Cody Crowley's. And really, that's what cost him this fight. It was a pure phone booth type of fight. In the pocket, banging with each other, great fight. Towards the end of this fight, I think it was round 12 or 11. I forget. I stayed up all night watching this card, so my memory's a little hazy. I think it was round 11 or round 12. Ramos landed, I believe it was an overhand right. I might be wrong, and it kind of dropped Cody Crowley to his haunches. So he went down like he was doing a squat. I think it was round 11. Apparently there was a video review and it showed that it wasn't a knockdown. I've not seen that replay. I have to admit, on first viewing, it didn't look like Cody Crowley's gloves touched the canvas. His knees certainly didn't. So maybe they made the right choice, but he was definitely buzzed by that shot towards the end of round 11. And yeah, the decision in the end was a majority decision to Cody Crowley. He won the WBC Eliminator. I felt a draw was a generous card for Abel Ramos, but he put in a good effort. He won rounds, he had success, but I felt this was like an 8-4 type of fight to Cody Crowley. As for Cody Crowley, he's a good fighter, strong guy, entertaining, seems to have a pretty good chin. He's always going to be in fun fights, but he's one of those guys who's probably going to get to the level to where he gets a title shot, but I can't really see him doing anything with the likes of Errol Spence or Terence Crawford. Who knows though, having said that, Spence has been out of the ring for quite some time, been very inactive. I guess that maybe that makes him a little more competitive, but if Spence or Crawford are at their best, I think they'll deal with Cody Crowley. He'll give it a go, he'll give it a good honest go, but he'll come up short against the elites of the elites in the welterweight division. But good fight, and we'll see where he goes next. Now, the fight after this was a fight between Chris Colbert and Jose Valenzuela at 135 pounds. It was a 10-rounder, and I have to say a really good fight. I liked this matchmaking because both guys were coming off bad defeats. Chris Colbert got beat up by Hector Luis Garcia, and Jose Valenzuela got knocked out in his last fight. So both guys were coming off losses with it all to prove, and they fought like that. Both guys put on a good fight. This fight started with drama. Jose Valenzuela, he catches Chris Colbert overextending with a left hook. That drops Chris Colbert quite heavily. Chris Colbert beats the count, and Valenzuela proceeds to beat up Chris Colbert for the rest of the rounds. He hurt Chris Colbert a couple more times in round 1 as well. And after round 1, you was thinking to yourself, yeah, Chris Colbert's getting knocked out. But to be fair to Chris Colbert, he remained strong and he remained resolute, Came back, had some real success in this fight. At times, he was able to work Valenzuela in the pocket. At times, he was able to push Valenzuela back. He landed some good rat-a-tat-tat combinations, quick combinations. Not necessarily always powerful, but he was rocking the head back of Valenzuela with some good combinations. I felt he put his shots together quite well at times, Chris Colbert in the pocket. However, Valenzuela, in my opinion, was certainly landing the harder punches. I felt a lot of his work to the body went unnoticed by the judges. He landed some really good combinations to the body. At times he was getting the better of the exchanges. At other times, Chris Colbert was. And it made for a really, really entertaining 10-rounder. Chris Colbert definitely made this fight close, in my opinion, due to his activity. But again, it was one of those fights to where Chris Colbert had a couple of good rounds, and then Valenzuela would come back with a couple of good rounds of his own. I always felt after the first round, Valenzuela was always slightly ahead, personally. Again, I wasn't scoring this fight round by round, so I would have to go back and watch this fight to score it, but I always felt Jose Valenzuela was ahead. And yeah, both guys put on a great show. If you like inside fighting, phone booth fighting, exchanges, this fight's for you. There was a knockdown. Colbert was hurt a couple more times as well. It made for a really entertaining fight. In the end, though, Chris Colbert won, surprisingly, a unanimous decision. All 3 scorecards were 95-94, so Colbert winning by 1 point. I have to say, I think Jose Valenzuela should feel extremely hard done by. From what I saw, I felt he won the fight. Chris Colbert made it very competitive, and considering how he went out in his last fight against Hector Luis Garcia, he showed a lot of heart in this fight, whereas against Garcia, that heart was lacking. So credit to Colbert for starting badly but coming back and making this a fight. Despite that, I felt Valenzuela should have got his hand raised here, personally. I felt he won the fight. And yeah, I mean, when you look at both guys now, to me, like, the next PBC pay-per-view, after the Ryan Garcia-Tank Davis fight, whatever the next pay-per-view is, stick this rematch on that undercard, because it's going to deliver. You know, I don't think Chris Colbert should move on here from this. I think he needs to rematch Jose Valenzuela. And, yeah, I'd look forward to a rematch. Who knows, maybe even make it a 12-rounder. Who knows? But yeah, good fight. I felt the wrong man got the decision. But again, I would have to really go through this with a fine-tooth comb to score it. And the co-main event was Jesus Ramos versus Joey Spencer. Now, these guys are two up-and-comers at 154 pounds. Jesus Ramos went in with a record of 19-0 with 15 knockouts. Joey Spencer went in with a record of 16-0 with 10 knockouts. Ramos is 22 years old. Joey Spencer is 23 years old. Credit to both guys for taking this fight early. I'm a big fan of when prospects fight each other. I like it when it happens. And there needs to be more of these sort of fights in boxing so we can sort of separate the men from the boys. And, you know, even the loser in such a fight, they're young enough to come back. And they're going to learn a lot more from defeats, more so than a knockover job against some no-hoper. So yeah, credit to both guys for taking this fight. Again, as I said, both guys were very young fighters. However, Jesus Ramos looked like the man, whereas Joey Spencer looked like the boy. Joey Spencer came out surprisingly aggressive against Jesus Ramos. I have seen a bit of Joey Spencer. I'll be real, I've never really rated him. He's got decent fundamentals, but he's usually a one-shot at a time guy. Likes to pull with the jab, draw the lead, counter, you know, mill around on the outside. He's that sort of guy. But in this fight, he came out relatively aggressive against Jesus Ramos. Jesus Ramos wasn't really doing much throughout most of the first round. He was kind of covering up, pouring the jab out of his southpaw stance, seeing what Joey Spencer had. And yeah, Joey Spencer was coming forwards, and I felt he was winning round one. To be honest, he landed a couple of good overhand rights. He tried to collapse the pocket and work inside. His work inside wasn't great, but at mid-range, he landed a couple of good overhand rights, a couple of good jabs. But towards the end of a round, Joey Spencer was caught slipping. Joey Spencer tried to close the distance as Ramos backed up to the ropes. He kind of fell in and was caught with a short left hook, which dropped Joey Spencer. I don't think Joey Spencer was seriously hurt, but he was dropped. It was a good shot. And yeah, 10-8 round for Jesus Ramos in round one. After round one, this fight was one-way traffic. Jesus Ramos, physically more imposing, better combination puncher, more power, better defense, better footwork. I felt he kind of picked apart Joey Spencer, to be honest. I have seen Ramos fight in spurts. I've seen bits of his fights here and there. But this is the first time I've really sat down and had a proper look at him. And I have to say, 22 years old, a guy who is more than likely going to improve, this is a guy to watch out for. I'm not proclaiming him to be a future pound-for-pound great or anything like that, but he's a talent. And again, you should watch out for him, in my opinion. I liked his high guard in this fight. He displayed a really good active high guard. I liked how he was adjusting his guard throughout this fight. You know, he would turn his gloves to catch and parry jabs and come back. He was also countering off his guard as well, which I felt was really impressive, in particular with his right jab and his right hook out of a southpaw stance. And yeah, he was methodically breaking down Joey Spencer round by round. Each round, Jesus Ramos would up the pace more and more. Ramos would then start mixing his attack up from body to head. Joey Spencer, to me, it looked like he wasn't sure of what was his game plan at times. it looked like he was trying to move a little bit in box, but at other times, and throughout most of his fight, he was standing with Jesus Ramos and sustaining a lot of punishment. Ramos in this fight, one thing I really liked was how he never crowded his work on the inside, whereas Joey Spencer did. When he was trying to throw up close, he would fall in and kind of smother his own work, but Ramos was very clean on the inside. You know, he's a big dude, Ramos, but he shortened his shots up really well, man. Uppercuts through the middle, hooks to body and head. Another thing I really liked, when both of these guys were standing in the pocket, Ramos would sidestep and step around the target while punching, changing the angles, you know, giving Spencer a real headache, you know. I loved that. I loved watching Ramos step around the target while punching, creating new openings. Really good stuff from Ramos offensively. And yeah, round by round, you know, Ramos was dissecting and beating down Joey Spencer. And another thing I like from Ramos, traditionally he's a pressure fighter, but he's got a well-rounded skill set. At times he was handling Joey Spencer from the outside, throwing good long punches. At other times he would then counter Joey Spencer as Joey Spencer was coming in. So he countered, he boxed, he fought on the inside, showed really good variety in his punches. And yeah, eventually, as this fight played out, Joey Spencer's face was getting more and more reddened, bruises under the eyes. I think he was bleeding as well from the nose, maybe. Yeah, he was sustaining a lot of punishment. And finally, in round 7, it was starting to get a bit ugly. Ramos just teeing off on Joey Spencer. And his dad, who is Joey Spencer's trainer, then throws in the towel. Good stoppage by his dad. Joey Spencer was done. I have to say, really enjoyed that performance by Jesus Ramos. I loved the variety that he showed me. I liked the variety. He's a talented fighter. Again, when it comes to a young fighter, I'm not going to proclaim him to be a future world champion or a future pound for pound star or anything like that, but this is a guy who has talent, has potential, has skill, has size, has power. He's 22 years old. He's going to get better. I think Jesus Ramos is a very talented fighter who you need to keep an eye out on. I think he looks good. I tell you what, I'd love to see Jesus Ramos versus Sebastian Fundora. I think that would be a tremendous fight. I don't think it would happen, but I'd love to see it. I'd love to see it. And yeah, get this guy out again. This guy has to be active. He's young. He's up and coming. He's got a great style. Get this guy out again relatively soon in the summer. Build this guy a fan base. He's got a great style. And yeah, the more fights, the more he's going to learn. You know, the sharper he's going to be. Hopefully PBC don't drop the ball on Jesus Ramos, because I think they have a talented fighter on their hands. I really do. Really enjoyed that performance. In fact, yeah, this fight was one-sided, but it was my favourite performance on the whole card. I really enjoyed watching him fight. Really enjoyed it. Again, I loved those step arounds when Ramos was working up close in the pocket. Loved the step arounds as he was punching. Really good stuff. I love the guard, the high guard. He tucks up really well. The countering, the jab, the power, the aggression, the combinations. Listen, Jesus Ramos, he earned a new fan in me, so I'll be following his career more closely going forwards. But anyway, I enjoyed this card, I can't lie. I enjoyed this card. The last time I stayed up till like 6 o'clock in the morning watching the whole card was probably Canelo versus Billy Joe Saunders. Or no, Fury versus Wilder, the third fight. It's been a long while. I really enjoyed this card. Anyway, share your thoughts below. What did you think of the undercard? Peace.